Nende Nemsola Valley Nerian Chu Dushe, and then Geshe Thubten Rabten, and the Chu Yun in the Dushe said on the She Thubten Rabten, the Shia, she said that in Ma, she added that Chu Gasore, Geshe Thubten Rabten said in Ma goes very.
Good evening. So we're continuing to look at the presentation on how to listen to teachings of the Dharma. So a couple of weeks ago, we looked at how to identify the three faults of a vessel that we need as students to abandon. Thereafter, we came to an alternative presentation on the 6 perceptions. The first was perceiving oneself as a patient. The second was perceiving the one expounding the Dharma as like a doctor. Thirdly, perceiving the instructions or the teachings as medicine. Fourthly, perceiving persistent practice as the cure. And fifthly, perceiving the Tathagata as an exalted being. And finally, generating the wish for the Dharma tradition to last long. So of these 6 perceptions, we have covered the first 4, and then tonight we'll start with the 5th, perceiving the Tathagata as an exalted being. And on the handed out text, it's on page 28, and in the printed book, it's on page 25. And the 5th perception, the 5th perception consists in bringing to mind the teacher of the Dharma, the Blessed One, and developing respect for him.
ane simjen sang magibe negasu simjen tamjige dondala ane simjen tamjige dunga seada digi jubege dondala ane janji chodo semge dinde pashin jugi nyamlenjene kawa chechene sobe sangyo komo tobare dida sangyo komo tomne gyön tamje ba yönde tamje tuzuju gyön kunse yönde kunden ane zewe danyejen ane düda namba kundu shen simjenlia zewachene ane dunga seada digi julia ane chuju kolo ane riba sumla sobe pato meba sonjin dushin jike gerin janghanjiri bem jikdini bem masigida dömba shige dubade yönden denegi demba ane jike zewe danyejen denejiri sembekede 구성 투숨기 연대한 전제 대박이야다 아니 되네 아니 ngaranzu 된다려야 아니 가와제 상기네 양아즈야 아니 추유콜로 감나 뭐바다 튀비기 최송제 당아즈이네 덤바시게 튀비기 안제수 송제 상유유 송제베 최텔이야 퇴삼 공숨제 냠제라데 마세이다 nanzulya kedin chimbo shui samje anya devadan kubaki yeore eseji de gedaru tinedo gevodanba ne gevodanbi düşe sade de samdan hadi düşene samdan ore esura.
The meaning then of perceiving the Tathagata as an exalted being is to recall the tremendous qualities of the Buddha, these qualities of his body, of his speech, and of his mind. Moreover, his incomparable kindness, recalling that in a distant previous life, when he was still an ordinary being, reached the point where he generated the determination, I will become a Buddha for the sake of others. Others need, as suffering beings, need me to guide them to attain liberation. And in order to do so, I myself must become the most skilled of guides. I must become a Buddha. And in this way, the being that would eventually become Buddha Shakyamuni generated bodhicitta, and for the sake of sentient beings, he embarked on the activities of a bodhisattva, accumulating merit for 3 eons. So here, and then when he eventually attained enlightenment, he then was able to perfectly fulfill that long-held heart wish. And he turned the wheel of Dharma, guiding beings in how to attain their own enlightenment. And he did so as a manifestation or an expression of his own tremendous love and care for suffering beings. So here, the meaning for us that we should take from this fifth perception, is we should recall the kindness and qualities of the Buddha so as to develop and strengthen a deep and sincere appreciation for what he has done for so many beings, including ourselves. And use this arisal of faith or trust in him and this feeling of closeness towards him as motivation to strive in our endeavors of hearing, reflecting, and meditating.
And in this, Sangyu Jimlin di Kusong Tu Sumbi Yundin di Yang Du Chinachik Samatang Chevache, that did the Sanchik Kawache in the chair and Chukom Jada in the Java and in the church in the Sumur said, Dusine Sangyu Jimlin di and Zeva di Kipachik, Dusin Samtan, Dusin Chik, and Shimduchin, Sosoragi, and Chik, never near Bajik, that didn't Chumadu, the Sangyu Jimlin Mixiki, the Chik. Deva, Shen Deva Topa said, Sangyu Kusung to Yuan Dendy, Sosuki, Tseming ever near, that one is Sangyu Lamuni than a Yapore was and big, the Deva did that, Shen Deva Topa said, Chagorova, she's Deni Zada, Denigi, Shen Deva Tojuna, and the Sangyu Jim Dendy said, Chick Semia, Ten Lamsa, Sangi Kusung to Yuan Dendy, Tenji, that Ben Masiki, that was Simjanamlia, getting Chimbo, the Pando Chimbo, Shuchi, and Bigida, Dusin. Getting to the Yungor water, and also that Jiki Sanyi Kusun to you in the Chazaji Hamowachi and the Sanyi Jumden said, Yapushi, some of the Sharashiragi to get Deva Jiki Timbur to Tan, Jiki, the two Marvada, Dimatubadi, that Sanyi Kusun to get Zevatin, the young Yapuchi and Lolia, and Jik Comshira, and Yapuchi Hamogovi. The how go by the Nigga how go one digina, the San Jim de Lam sooner do Chick by Geshe or the Lamsa, the Chitembe and them, Jimidawa shoe, Chickaba the Papa Jim body, and simply a Jane or do, and Deva around me by Kiada, and Jiggy, Devi on Gede, Namsa, and Jig Mixu, Koyala Sobada, then Ungur over them. Shene Deva Toba. Shena Hagone, Sanyi Dunda de Sukusu Yundendi Hago, Seming Ebanye, Shevas and Seming Ebanye, didn't Deva Gena, Deva de Demushu Chagorova. Shene Deva Toba. Hagone, Deva Jawa, Esur. Hamona Megane Mondiesur, than as we didn't see. Dunda Hamona Deva Gena, Mondiesur, some Mondia, Shene Devi, then Ichi Deva said, Deva Della, Chiknasoyorva.
It's good to be clear on why we recall the qualities of the Buddha. So it may sound a bit academic to hear that one should recall the qualities of the Buddha's body, speech, and mind. But this is there's a great purpose to doing this. Because whilst the qualities of the Buddha are really, the full extent of the qualities of the Buddha are beyond our comprehension, but to the extent that we have whatever level of understanding of the qualities of the Buddha, that's what we should call to mind. And then in addition to that, the tremendous kindness that he, as a bodhisattva, and then much later as a Buddha, brought to other beings, including ourselves. So the purpose of thinking like this is to develop a sincere appreciation for the Buddha himself, not to have him as a distant historical figure or someone we've just heard about, but rather to generate a sincere appreciation. And in this way, to the extent that one is feeling an appreciation for his kindness and a beneficiary of his kindness, our connection with him grows and strengthens. And this is where our level of faith in the Buddha starts to transform. So faith can be understood can be divided and presented in different ways. So there's a level of blind faith, which is the imprints that we come in and we have some faith. But what one does as one develops more knowledge, and in particular as one reflects on that knowledge, and it deepens within one, is one's faith in whatever the topic. So here it's to do with the Buddha. One's faith becomes a faith-based, or a faith arisen from knowledge, a faith arisen from reasoning. This is a much more stable and deeper faith. So this is what we generate through analytical meditation. In this case, it's in relation to the Buddha. We're strengthening our connection with him, and a connection that's on a sincere emotional level. And in this way, our faith in the Buddha is becoming more stable and more heartfelt. When one's faith in a topic, in this case, the Buddha, becomes deep, then one may well have reaction of one's eyes welling up with tears. Maybe even one will cry. And this comes about, again, due to the cultivation of a sincere faith through reflection. So therefore, when you hear about the need to recall the qualities of the Buddha and feel an appreciation for him, this isn't just about reciting a list of qualities and a list of things to be appreciative for, but it's really to develop a heart connection and strengthen one's heart connection with the Buddha. Then the sixth of the six perceptions, generating the wish for the Dharma tradition to last long. The sixth perception consists in the thought how wonderful it would be if from listening to such a Dharma, the victor's teachings remained in the world for a long time.
lam nyamlen jebale tenen tarwa topda nyanang lam an kibu chumyo lam yiribe nyamlen jeda tene kibu chenbo an ta dingi kaza kibu dingi lam ni rimbe nyamlen jeda tene kibu chenbo an chenbe nyamlen yirimba di pa do chen juje do sen nyamlen rimba nyamba siura chu didabo se de tene ge nyamlen jeda rimba di ge so sen so su ge nye tene nyanne an do sen nye de tene ge ta nyamlen rimba di 최 냠는 디렘바디 당아도 심지어 탐조 코외 동아를 주외 탑랍대원에 람 냠는 제림바 디레도 와스 지산 디 냠는 제하딩 아주 인지미지 고구도 지사다 소수게 냠는 제와 말에 균리고 심지어 탐제 상이 마제기 보도 디유 지 냠는 림바디 파 균마 제바제 안 지게 도신 내고도 선배게 삼단에 데네기 기회 땜바세도 상이기 땜바 제르다 타바다 탐지kimbio 고바 토바집에 탑람 냠는 림버세고 상이 땜바선 냠는 림바디 데 점리데 지된데네야 안에 심지어 탐지 상마기 봐도 내고도 내나 지마로 내고도 내버쇼 선배게 되네게 삼다들이다.
So as one comes to understand the Dharma better, hearing ever more teachings, covering more topics, whether the topics of the two truths, the Four Noble Truths, or coming to understand the Lamrim, going through the trainings that are shared with the practitioner of initial capacity, followed by those trainings which are shared with the practitioner of intermediate capacity, and coming to the trainings that are unique to a practitioner of supreme capacity. As one comes to gain ever deeper understanding of these, again, not an intellectual understanding, but based on the knowledge that one is receiving, hearing, and the reflection that one does, one starts to experience that the profound benefits of the Dharma. Through that, a sincere trust or faith in the teachings will also arise. And because one is starting to gain experience of the benefits that the Dharma can bring in one's life, this then leads to a very stable conviction of the benefits that the Dharma will bring to oneself. And if it can bring such benefit to oneself, certainly it can to others as well. So in this way, through developing the conviction that the Dharma can lead to lasting happiness, the happiness of liberation and enlightenment, the deep and sincere wish arises, may the Dharma abide in the world because of the tremendous benefit that it is bringing to oneself and can bring to all others too.
Da yuni de mane bayina denige sanyi ki kibo chumo da jingda ane jik tewa chembe lamye rimba sanyo ko modu tabla nyamlengi rimba di jige nyamsu le dene nige nyamsu le jedene jik jinma nyamsu lenge mewa che mena dene ko shingen che me yo marwa dene ko mewa charu kurwa jisan shingen mena mo bana shenda labya yo marwa jisan dene yeza ndi labya mena 데니기 냠는지게 림바디 신경 말에 마신 바나 근데 타바드 탐지기면 고 톱투고 말에 된 용친 보시고 지레샤 된자 디 냠는기 림바디 다 소수이네 냠는제 소수규래 냠용게 디마 샹리아 셰네 샹리아 냠는제죠 아니 샹리아 데니기 냠는지 냠용게 데소마도 신의 샹라시 두신 템바디 계획상이기다 데니게 타바드 탐지기면게 고방 토바집에 탑게 람이림바디 냠는 림바디 파 윤리네 내고도 다 많이 봐있나다 냠는 제제 냠용제네 샬리아 된바지 된마도 봐있나 되네 직접 제 되네기 된게 매바나 되네 제알이야 냠는 제고 고브라기 말에 되네 타바탐지 김고 와돌래 가래 하고 최고래 용시우래고래 제자 되네자 되네기 냠는 림바 소수에네 퇴네 퇴비 된들이야 냠는 제 안 소소이네 냠는 제베드네 냠용어 토네 안 잘래야 잡지게 마 판도제시 송야다 안도시네 윤리네 내가 제우도 선배게 도시네 삼당고를 해서 대던다라 소수게 퇴 소수게 냠는 제 소수게 냠줄레네 소수게 냠용 제시네 냠용어 토네 안 잘래야 봐 시신 만지 마 판도주기 성고를 해서다
This sixth perception comes about independence on gaining a broad and deep education in the Dharma and integrating what one has been hearing or studying, integrating that through reflection. And in this way, one starts to the extent that the Dharma is starting to arise in one's mind, that one's way of thinking is becoming infused with the Dharma. One experiences the tremendous power of the Dharma, the tremendous benefit it brings to one. In this way, one, on a very sincere level, comes to appreciate the Dharma, value the Dharma. Then, through this valuing of the Dharma, the wish will come, may all others also be able to encounter this valid lineage of unmistaken teachings. That these teachings that I am cultivating within myself, cultivating initially the trainings which are shared with the practitioner of initial capacity, and now perhaps, depending where you are, you're cultivating the trainings that are shared with the practitioner of intermediate capacity, aspiring to cultivate those of a practitioner of supreme capacity. In the same way that you are training your mind and experiencing the benefits and aspiring to develop further, you wish for others to have this opportunity to. But you recognize for them to have the opportunity to encounter the Dharma has to abide in the world. And the meaning of the Dharma abiding in the world means that there are living practitioners in the world, those who are cultivating the minds of the Dharma within them. Because in dependence on the cultivation of the Dharma through reflection, based on what one has heard, what one has studied, one is then able to impart that, to share that with others. So recognizing that that is the meaning of the Dharma abiding in the world, that there are beings who are cultivating it within them. Because one now values the Dharma so, this adds to one's motivation to further strive in cultivating the Dharma in one's own heart so that one can share it with others. One doesn't leave this to one's teachers or to the great and the good, but one takes this as one's own responsibility. I need to cultivate ever more so that I can share with others. So this serves to spur one on to continue to engage in hearing and reflecting so as to deeply integrate the Dharma in order to share it with others. And that is the meaning of the Dharma abiding in the world.
Dine, Shenya, so Shenya, that Dinigi Chike Dushi Tuktime Sung Sane, Shenya Sam Dana, Shenyang, so Che Cheba, Nyembana, and the Rangi Yu Loso Sha, Che Loso Sheba Di, Jiyang Nidu Mujue, Rangi Yu Denlam, Wabiki Chedo, Nyemba Shikuso, so that's Jerem Chikusungore.
Lama Tsongkhapa then continues, if apart from that you ignore your own mind stream while explaining or listening to the Dharma remaining separate from it, then whatever is being explained will miss the point. Therefore, you have to listen with the intention of developing understanding in your own mind.
Then the next Nena Ping Marriage, she's not the Garsos, not Anzuki, Chinanga Zuki Chue, Yamba Yimbala, Chitinit in the Nesucha Hawache, in a Sosuke, Samnalpa, Samnolpa, Gulpa, Jarch, and some Matabena, and the Chue, Rangi Gudi, Lo Shakache, Chue, Shandashi, some Tadivena, and the Rang Pandokayong, Young Marese, she's a near to Midu Pinky Mares. And I did open a Shengi, Luguru, Shenema did in the chip in the area, watch it, such a dinner in the Yoras, and to Shene, dinner the Yoras, the news to the Haku Mado, in a social pagas go Marwa, Bene. Me did me Marwa, Chesandi, Church, da Rangi Gulos Japan, Dinashinda, then Yamne dinner the Jor, dinner the Jor said, near to the pie, Turche, in a social Sammon Alpa, to charge Yamne Madame Yamlin, charge some Yamne Majavina, and the Turvazam did Pandoska Gumares, Chesan Tuedisha, social Turvache. The Turkey did only Naranga Semlaya, Sempa, Gudolba, Jagu words, Gul Majavaina, the next church, Yan Chedina, Rangi Guni, Loss of Chajong Res, Loss of Chajong Dinena, and the church Sheva in Nada, Nyemba in Nada, and the Dunda, near to Mujuves, Dunda Yawachi, Pandojung Mares order, Rangi Sim, Guatet Mares order.
Lama Tsongkhapa is making an important point here, asking the rhetorical question, what is the benefit in listening to teachings if you are not hearing or receiving these teachings and reflecting on them in relation to yourself? What is the benefit to your mind if you are hearing teachings but thinking about them in relation to how they relate to others? If one approaches any teaching like that, how is your own mind going to transform? In fact, if one approaches a teaching like that, it becomes just another expression of the gathering of worldly knowledge. For example, one may have an interest in history, and read a lot about history and actually be quite knowledgeable in history. It's very, very nice. It may be useful in your life, but it's not going to transform your mind. So if one's approach to the Dharma is academic, then all that one hears is not going to touch your heart. It's not going to transform your mind. And that is the whole purpose of engaging in the Dharma. So therefore, again, if one approaches the teachings just as an academic exercise, doesn't receive them as heart advice for oneself, then your mind will not change. The teachings will remain separate from you.
How go was the Session didn't share said so some Nalaya, Yambicala, Jigimeva, or the Jigiminuadi, teacher who was a begin Jigimeva, no ruin by the Hauko, Tene, Sosugi, the Tatar, which you such as that, Tene, Koi, and Della Bebas, and Hauko was a word, Della. Didn't how go in a Yango is, how go which the Yangor was, she said Yamzu Dusin, Yamlenjet had how go which the Yangor was, she said Dine is a Yambala Della Dine, and Zugudusin, Yamlin Sosu Gulea, Jarj, Yamlin Kuores, Tinyam Majeva and a Pingo Mares, she said the Yango Gumza Govatian, Sosu Gula, Judging Yamlinje, Sosu same the Guataya Dondalia, and Didona Yangor was, Dineza, Guli, Jarj, and Yamlinje Gores as Sungor.
This is made clear in the sentence, therefore you have to listen with the intention of developing understanding in your mind. So every teaching you receive, you should listen to it in terms of recognizing one's own faults, one's own areas for development, to be able to identify these, and then to listen further in terms of, so how can I transform these faults? How can I eradicate these faults? So that's second. And then third, actually do so. Put it into practice. This term, to practice, means to gain experience of. That is the purpose of the Buddha Dharma, is to help us gain experience of it. To gain experience of it, one has to listen to teachings, but one has to listen to teachings with an interest, a curiosity as to how the teaching applies to oneself. And then put that into practice. And this is because the very purpose of the Buddha Dharma is to enable beings to transform their own minds. Not just a mere academic exercise, but to transform their own minds.
I don't know if you do some time with a chain young Gores, so that don't know. Then so again, Yamlet Bas, Gudule Jache, that Tewasum Jagores, Roda, just not Dudule Jane, and a Shogores did that. Kissing has never tabby to share so never tabby to share some down or lab, some cartan Goresina, Yadang, Anzugi, Arang, and Jigge, Dungada, Jigge, Nenazata. Ganga Yade, Arjuke, Randa, Shencha, Sul Devine, Chikoa, you can Chasa, Dungadang, and the Ganga you can Jaya read was the Ganga Yuba de Susukula, Nyomo Dusum Yuba, Yubi, Diwange Ganga Tigdus, Chazang Arangule, Nyomo Dusum Yore, Diwange, and Dushene, Chike Ganga Tigores, Chazan Yomo Dusum Gidus, Nardo Yores, and Begi, Daddy, Yore, Chazadi, Tam Mavasuadi. So she did some died, so you then never tabby to share some natare. That Dembala and Casore, member tabasa you do, that he need tablam di, Yomo, but the Ganga chair, the tablam, Su Sigri, the tabno, Sutungri, Labda, that's San Yigi, Dembig, right, Castle, Dembig, San Yigi, Sungri, the tablam, the Dungri, that Manoa, the Martu, then Dungri, Sembegeda, Ishi did that, Casore, the member that we say some data needed to check so sugi the chain yambi cablia, then again, so sui Yamlen charge, so solo del chai, some data. Ni shares on there.
you'll recognize how, whilst we are in the sixth perception here, how this fits very well with what we've been looking at within these six perceptions. You'll recall that the very first perception was perceiving oneself as a patient, as recognizing that something's not quite right, that there's something that is wrong, I'm afflicted in some way. And thereafter, come to recognize that it's these particular three poisons that afflict our mind. Ignorance afflicts our mind, attachment afflicts our mind, anger afflicts our mind. And in this way, we perceive ourselves as a patient. Then we turn to who can help us, who is a skilled doctor who can help us. And we recognize that is the founder teacher, Buddha Shakyamuni. So here too, we see how the focus is on recognizing that, a focus on ourselves, not looking outside of ourselves, but that there's our own mind is what needs to transform.
And then we chill and men that we do share that the niggas men that we do share some data, so some data cartons. That the Jigan, the Garson, so Sugi Ganga, Yomo, do some this the Ganga Dunga, by the Sosugi in Hago, so do this the tablam the suit Dungers and Tumbadi, San Yigi, Mano, Martuba, Dungers and Bishi, Nivetich, Sumba de la, that San Yi, Dumbi, tablam Dunche by tablam D, and then Anzugi. tablam di nyam su lemba ina ta nge dunga de se tugure san be yi shi che de la men da wa sam da se.
So the starting point is to recognize that it's the three poisons, anger, attachment, and ignorance, that cause all our suffering, cause our illness, and that the doctor, the person who perfectly can analyze and prescribe the treatment is Buddha Shakyamuni, and the treatment, the medical treatment, is that of the teachings of the Buddha, the Buddha Dharma.
Nende nyamso lamba le ne le ne tsue du she la yo di sam da ga so san yi ge sun che be tablan sam ba de so so nyamnen je so so ge nyamnen je du che de ne lam nyamnen gyu le ye che ne pa be ge go phang an pa be lam tho be de go den da lam de ni ma tho yo de ma ngan ko pa jo ka sa ko wi ge ma so du ga le zhe ya da de ne ge nyom ba sa ba na che ba bang no de an ta be go ba tho tho ya de kowe dungal tenyu jotuwa de tende yungure sembegeda ishi samde yung samtaade da neso yu dushesa direda samdustan yerwa shiba dirwa de dushirwa.
In dependence on the first three of the six perceptions, coming to recognize that the teachings of the Dharma are the medicine, we reflect on the Dharma, the teachings that we are receiving, recognizing the need to put this into practice ourselves, recognizing that training our mind in the precise way that we are being guided will lead our mind to transforming from its current afflicted state to attaining true paths and true cessations. And when true paths and true cessations are attained, one attains liberation from the sufferings of samsara. One is then no longer ill, one is then no longer suffering, no longer a patient, because now one is completely healed, one has attained liberation from suffering. But this only comes about through persistent or intense practice, which is the cure for the afflictions.
Kivu Tambala, Kivu Tamba, Tishabal, Kivu Timbi Dushis, Sanji, the Nigga Tablam Denze, the Sanju Horonia, Yama Kawachi, Yamlenji, Horong, Yamyon, Gule, Horonga, the Niggi, Guen Hamjil, Genu, Yunden, Dine, Tobje, and the Nigging on the Ladustim, but the Ben Massivi, the Coron, Yunden, Dinishi, Chamber, Yunden, Dinish, Tablam, Yomo, Bang Tang, Dungas, Kowa, Drag, Dungas, Tablam Koran, Dini Kingo, change the Koran Dusin Tablam. Denegi nyomolo jo saware chisa dinga zulia zewi ki tuje wonge nganzulia chidu chima Tina, Masi getting Chimbushi, Sampeda, Dinigi Rabada, Dinigi Saji, Sungi Turji, Yamin, Koya, Masa Yabura, Dinida, Tangan's Betchik. Yaku Kohab Yaku shoes, Rason Sambegi, Dinigi getting Jesu Jambata, and this Gichi, Davaki, Din Chikinavadura, Chezan 2% or Dinigi Yamli Rimbadida, Kovi Duma Tada Ludriba, Tabla Yamli Rimbadi, Deepa Yunin Bujine or Mato, Jiki Yamlin Majeva Zoroban, Mahoban Shandala. And Chige Martin Madden Shangi Dija Ganga said to Yakawachido. Dineza di Sosuine, Yamlen Jeje, Jig, Toba Denega Gula Yawache, Shalpa Den, Pa Shalpa, Jim Jilma, Loma Mongbulet, and Yamlen Jejo, Consu Shal, the Duchin, my Uniwonia, near Gudu, Sam Bigdene, Sam Puya, Duchin, some Namuri, said Duchin, not Dushi Dugicon, some Data, Sosu Gudola, and do some Davena, this to Tanguri, as I did it.
Dependence on these first four perceptions, one is now at the point of striving in the Dharma, applying it to oneself. Here, as particular, as one is starting to feel the impact of the Dharma on one's mind, a deep and sincere appreciation arises for the Dharma and for the founder teacher of the Dharma, for the Buddha himself, recognizing that all this benefit that I am receiving is possible because the Buddha, many lifetimes ago, made a commitment to become a Buddha, to attain the paths of a bodhisattva and strive to become a Buddha, and did so over eons, accumulating virtue, and the whole time, at the forefront of his motivation, were beings just like myself. Then he attained this exalted state of Buddhahood with all the qualities of a Buddha's body, speech, and mind. And I am now experiencing the benefits of his hardships, his endeavors, recognizing the great kindness of the Buddha and feeling a deep sense of appreciation for him, which is now the fifth perception. The determination comes, I will not waste this opportunity. I will not waste this opportunity. This serves to aid our effort. So our effort was expressed in the fourth perception, it's enhanced in the fifth. And then, experiencing the great benefits of the Dharma, having a deep and sincere appreciation for the Dharma, then the sixth perception comes about. May this precious jewel of the Dharma abide in the world. May it abide in the world evermore, so it can help all sentient beings. Because its loss in our world would be such a grave loss for suffering beings. May it abide in this world. And the way that it abides is in the continuum of genuine practitioners. This is my responsibility to fulfill. I will strive to cultivate the Dharma ever more within me so that I can be of benefit to others. So here the sixth perception comes about, and it serves to bring about a deep inner confidence of what we can achieve and an inner strength, a determination to do so.
Denige samdaje dajike dushina samdaidu denige sanyi che sanyi le deva sanyi che le deva denige yundi nyams lemba denige dumba ligorwa dene za dene dushina samdaje nyamba ina ane rangi gyuda che loso shaba de chagyo mares rangi gyuda che yin jegores ta den rangi gyuli cha nyams lingore dene za los jana ji yan pendo nedu mido ala de tadi dokshola deni chebaina nyamslena yarke tugres dinenza rangi gu tenla bebe ke dushine nyamlen jigore di nyembe gu gwebaya tiri saji chegorwa.
Through this progression of development, an ever deeper aspiration arises within oneself to cultivate the Dharma within. And to the extent that one does, the Dharma becomes ever more entwined, your mind ever more mixed with the Dharma. In other words, the minds of the Dharma dominate within one. And this then leads to ever further spiritual developments. Then the text presents an example. To illustrate this, when you want to see whether there is dirt or some other impurity on your face, you look at yourself in a mirror. And if you find a smudge there, you remove it.
So you don't la carga melon le shagore shao do odadi que digimin sembe que diresha dit c'est de ne meva sa tsangma su du was pedina shin pedi diresa ta pedina shin da disore de la rangi cheba kyun chaba namjang chönyen ba na chugi melon do sha las di che da gyun gu didabur songos she yila dongwa ge de dene gyun se shin The
illustration is quite clear in that without relying on a mirror, how will we know whether our face is dirty or not? And then the text continues. Likewise, when you hear the Dharma, your faulty behavior appears in the mirror of the Dharma, whereupon you feel anguish thinking, this is what my mind stream has come to. Then as you engage in eliminating faults and attaining excellent qualities, you necessarily train in accordance with the Dharma.
Nalo samlo nala karagyo me sedi shewata na hadugo menju chena hago tuya kale khaboredwa tini shandage chiki hago tuya kale khaborwa samlo nala karakhogo mede chidan rong range sam nala nurtu da ani jiba da mari badige ta je kare hago re lamna ne rangi jeba gyun chaba nam sedu rangi jeba ani samlo da na ani gyun yoba dige gyun nurtu dige ane ganes hagoreला chue nyenba na ane nyenba ne chugi melon de shala chue sedi nga zuge semgi nanglo gi gyun de gyun da yuen de ge pa shego na xin shaya gi melon na xin ses jesan chue gi du chen lo bjo tue ba ji tue chue gi don da du chen tue yong du ka la ane oda ding yi samno na di digmin do di digi do sembi ge so so ge samno ta thang gi So
whilst we can and should rely on a mirror to see the dirt on our face, a mirror is of no use when trying to see the faults on our mind. But here we have met the Dharma, and the Dharma serves as a mirror that we hold up to our own mind. And in this way, we can come to recognize the impurities that obscure our mind.
And the control she ege Dandala Carson, Sham Shalia, Jambata Zell, Negap Giada, Tautunipa, Jig Meva, Namune, Kora Malay, Dandal, some Karakara Tango Ladu, Tanganjugi, Jike, Shalia, Zawata, Jamba Comia, some Damena, 디콘바이네 소수 콘르시야 안디야 콘르디게 사보나 제바 메바 쇠바이나 다음에 바토베 동바니 되베 셔라 콤제 사보나 제바 바신 메바 쇠디 두스 콤고레 세디 제자디 마주게 되차 콘로 나야 데니기 뇨모버릭디다 마주게 균디 소술련 균 뇨모바디 균제 제자 디소마 세게 탑람디 아는 냠랭기 최 남는 님보 때야 냠는 가르치 고르세베 니 최를 되네 순하고 그래서 제자디 최기 멜론라 되네 샤와나신 디레세스 두송으로
When we utilize the mirror of the Dharma to show to us, to show to ourselves our faulty way of thinking. The external mirror, we can look for faults and imperfections in our body, but we use the Dharma as the internal mirror to recognize faults with our way of thinking. But not only that, through relying on the Dharma, we also come to understand what we can do about these faults, how we can eradicate these faults. So, for example, we come to recognize, firstly, the degree to which anger in all its forms, whether frustration and annoyance, all the way up to rage and hatred, we come to recognize anger in all these forms, and come to understand that it is only faulty, it only causes suffering. So this is the first part that the mirror of the Dharma plays, in that it shows us the faults in our mind. Moreover, the Dharma serves to guide us in what we can do about that they are temporary antidotes that we can and should cultivate, such as love and compassion. And the Dharma also doesn't just present what those temporary antidotes are, but presents in step-by-step detail how to cultivate a deep and sincere loving attitude and compassionate attitude. Moreover, the Dharma doesn't only present the crucial temporary antidotes, but also the ultimate antidote of the wisdom realizing emptiness, and also then presents the various steps of reflection to engage in so as to cultivate the wisdom that realizes emptiness. And this is the case for anger, and it's the case with the other faults in our way of thinking, such as attachment, pride, and ignorance. The mirror of the Dharma allows us to identify these faults, to recognize them as faults, as well as come to understand what their antidotes are, and the step-by-step training that we embark on, mental training, so as to apply antidotes to each of these afflictions.
这当然这个国外的哲学科学的国外的马塔瓦就塔巴托马托瓦的开始吧了好吧的是呢这当然这个科学动啊来尼米马塔瓦什么尼米都是呢什么尼米到马塔瓦的大呢尼米大呢莫讲吧尼米什么马塔瓦的地区差的了这是的这那个现在尼米马塔瓦的尼米马塔瓦上科外的他对个三八马基瓦的基础个嘛的 디 교회에서 지난 코알레 탈도 some 메기들 타바 토부도 셈비게 타바 등이 듬바기고 말 디교회 차고를 제상 아주 코알레 마타와디 데니게 삼마타와디 교회에서 지상 아주 코알레 게디나 코알레야 차신기고를 거기에 뒤에는 차신기 될이야 차 안전바게 될이야 도스는 지게 탈도게 삼는 교회에 마타 거기에 최래 연된다 안 될이야 차신기 아니 개연데 될이야 탈도게 삼바기고 말에 데니 탈도에서 말미도 타바토게 등이 듬바기고 말에서 세상 디마게 와서 타바토 두고 말에서 세상 두두시네 최파 직대연도 안두시네 안 가르치고 그래서 다는 타바토와라 가르고 그래 제고를 납나 디교에나 대소 가르치 매봐서 그래라도 담보 콜비게 교연을 콜비 줄에 예미다고 그래서 콜비 교연되게 삼당 교연이 하고 와지 될이야 교연섬 데니 교연 통일 때는 대균 힐레데 타고도 선배 타도게 삼바기 오래스 데네 타고도 선배다 코와를 탈비게 타바세 토부도 타바 토고도 서 타바 등이 듬바기 오래스 니게네 타바 등이 듬바데 숙침보 끼어도 니게 끼인지 타바 토베게 탑람 진바도 주름 tuma la sopa nyamna jina dame ba to ishera nyamna jeba la tene tarba top tu gores chesa di jine di chela tene ha go re che ba tene ha go re chere
So sitting here as suffering beings who are not liberated from the sufferings of samsara, by holding the mirror of the Dharma up to our own minds, we'll come to recognize why that is the case. And this is because the very foundation has yet to be developed. We have good imprints, we have an interest, but we are not yet in the position where we are striving wholeheartedly for liberation. And the reason for that is because we haven't really thought about the faults of samsara. To some degree, we have an appreciation of this. But the reason we haven't given rise to a burning desire to be freed from the sufferings of samsara is because we haven't yet come to recognize the pervasiveness of the sufferings of samsara. And therefore, we have not yet abandoned this life's concerns. What mostly dominates our mind is not a determination to attain liberation from samsara, but rather attaining this life's pleasures, rather avoiding this life's problems and difficulties. These two classes of thought are what dominate us, because we are still deceived by this life's pleasures and problems, thinking they have a meaning beyond what they actually do in reality. And because of that deception, we have insufficient mental space to have a deep and sincere determination to utilize what remains of this life to attain liberation. So by holding up the mirror of the Dharma to our own mind, we can see this fault. And this then will serve to encourage us to reflect deeply on the faults of samsara and overcome our distractions to this life's meaningless pursuits. And then in that way, we'll open ourselves up to be able to apply our mind to the Dharma with the vigor that is required in order to create the causes, to cultivate the minds that are required in order to actually attain liberation. So to get to these various stages, it's essential to hear and reflect through relying on the mirror of the Dharma.
rangi duanda rangi ni jik digi tu na so so ge jik chen ha ro ja ba wo ro ji ji go ro ba de jin ji lo chen bo che da ma le channel ya ji ge je geshe ro go da ya da de ne ge to ne yin je di me me de rangi duanda la ya an ji ga le che we ne ji ge je tu na ji mi di chen ha da ba wo da de ne ge ji je an ji ne ge ji ge xian ya an ji ge 강아지야다 통조다야다 데니 신고로와 데네자 디수 용의 긴지 아주라 랑지진게 삼로도 숙천부 여바인자 네 셴야와도 랑지진 삼로 숙천부 여바래 디 아주 산유고바 톱도 마도 지산 디 랑지진 삼로디 다 딩아주 가르쳐 봐서는 지산 디수 메바 쇠야라 가르쳐 버서는 진 셴야 제와다 셴기 된다 삼도 셴 제와 공비하다 셴리 진니주 공비하다 잠바 공비하 다 학삼 셴심제 탐지게도 팬도징이 두기 셴기 된다래 나랑 갈래가잖아 자기 나랑 경가잖아 개화민도 가정이 셴기 된다 셴리 디기 준다 지기도 삼비 삼로 두스당 고레스 데네 따와인자 따와이나 셴심제 탐지 산주 고바 토버쇼 삼비기 삼로 전주심기 두그레 잠니지기 전주심곰 디고묘도 랑치징이 삼로 디게 도와데 셴네 바시 주야 지리고레 디루바나 한 파주르기 냠내진 산주 고바 토고레스 제사 데네기 타바 토블람디 때 제사 두치는 최기 토네 냠네 지치 삼다에도 갑라 rang jie jing ye samlo da nga ra di gi jun de shan le de gang a zhe wei ne xin yi guo da tu wei ne da nga ji xi luo qin bo dun xian de ji ma de jia xue tuo xie wei ne ngang zui bei ya guo le sim luo ji yong le sim bi ti samlo da ta de no yin ba de ha gu tu gu le ji da di no chu gi jian jian han san ji guo ma to ma de wei di gi jian le di no chu yi ma ha guo di no chu ha guo de an di se ge tablam de kan se se xian le chang ba de zhe wa gong ya da an de ji la san nam da gong ya jian xue sem gong ya da jian xue sim yu gu ne la de pa jin ru gi niam le ji ne du xie de an san yu gong ma de tabla yin ba de ha gu le se wo da di确了的哈gu le se wo确确吧你
Furthermore, through holding up the mirror of the Dharma to our mind, we can answer the question, why is it that we are not Buddhas? When we look clearly at ourselves, we'll come to see the extent that our self-centered attitude, or our grasping at ourselves as dear, how this dominates us, how we put the fulfillment of our needs first and foremost, how we so readily push others aside in order to fulfill our needs, how we so easily justify taking advantage of others, or we readily mock those that we dislike, all about putting ourselves first and foremost. So this we need to recognize. And here, through relying on hearing the Dharma, which is how we hold the mirror of the Dharma up to our own mind, we come to recognize this and also reflect on the harm that this self-cherishing attitude does to ourselves and others. This then will spur us in the next section of the teachings, which is what to do about this. To then apply ourselves to cultivate the contrary mind, the mind that holds others as dear, reflecting on the many benefits of cherishing others, placing the needs of others first and foremost. This then comes together with the cultivation of genuine love for others, genuine compassion for others. These then we cultivate further to the point where we take responsibility for the welfare of others. And eventually, by training this way, we'll even be able to generate bodhicitta. And through these steps of training, as we progress along them, we'll initially need to make a lot of intentional effort. But as we make progress, this effort starts to fade away in that we take ever more joy in what we're doing. So from one perspective, we will be actually applying ever more efforts as we progress. But from another perspective, the experience will not be one of effort, but of ever more joy. And in this way, know what from one perspective would be seen as hardships on the path, no such hardships would be experienced in that with joy. All what otherwise would be difficulties are overcome. Then as one develops, cultivates bodhicitta, then all the various practices of a bodhisattva, one is readily engaging in, and engaging in as a bodhisattva, and engaging in the actual 6 perfections. So this sequence of training is something that we require, we need to do. But it starts from recognizing the faults that are actually present in our own mind. And this comes about through hearing the Dharma, through hearing teachings, and reflecting on their meaning.
아자 제자 되니기 최년비기 멜론하는 디스큐인다 연전되기 이제 교인지다 하고 교인의 세계 탑람디 하고 그래서 그래 디체에서 디체 다기 규디더로 송어 제자 디체에서 최퇴퇴퇴용돼 갑라 되네 퇴배 갑라 아다 소수기 삼로나라 양이 너를 삼로 따나데 너를 레도와 선배기 하고 그래서 디체 다기 규디더 송어 등이 되네 코와라 제 차신제야 다 되네 라지 삼로도 수용도 하서면 Dine zang ko le tar ma tu ba da tarbi sanji ko ma to ma tu ba re sunde she yila duwa ke de so o da dine ge di che se dinge no chu shu di min do san be ge samlo na ya che duwa sin de bin duwa ke ba da so ru ba da she san di da de duwa si do dine di min do san be ge sam da ya so dine sam da na ga jo so dine gyen ni se shin yuan den zhu ba la so re ju be si da dine gi gyuen di pa se che yuan den zhu ya la ju be la de nyam se leng go re so ka le nyam se leng go re se de shi nga zu ko wa le ya nge jung ka sa ko bi gyuen da ya dine gi gyuen di se ya de shi ko wa le xian cha ge sam lo ju lo wa di gyuen je di se ya le ya an sam la ka da so ko wa le gyuen da ho re ko wa le gyuen da dine ko wi ta be ta ba de ni sam dang ho re 지나신 대시 랑 제징의 삼로 대축천보다 안전이야 진리기 차와지게 되니 삼로디 규현지 디세알라 탑론 가르도서는 잠바다 니조고 확산 남다고 자주심 공부래서 주베스 제단되는 주베스 냠술 렘베 아니 최기 시수 로바레 로바시오 되니기 냠술 렘도 최기 산유 점nen데 손시베 최기기 로바 나신 제수가 로구어레스 디나신 로구어레 디나신 제고고레스 원래
through hearing teachings and relating to them as being personal instructions for oneself. In other words, holding the mirror of the Dharma up to one's own mind. One will come to recognize, as the text says, that is what my mind stream has come to. So here, through deep investigation, an honest recognition arises of how our life up to this point has been largely wasted in distraction to meaningless affairs. All these pleasures we strove for and have long forgotten, all these problems and difficulties that dominated our mind so, and now have long been forgotten. What a waste of our energy, of our time. And moreover, the very center of my motivation behind almost all I've done has been this self-cherishing attitude, grasping at oneself as dear. So this is an honest recognition of where we currently are. Accompanying this, though, through our broader education, and thereby having much more that can appear in the mirror of the Dharma, we also recognize that this precious human rebirth has incredible potential. So here, with these two thoughts, these two recognitions coming together, the determination arises to fulfill our potential, to utilize well what remains of this opportunity, to not let another day go to waste, but to use it skillfully. Then we will reflect in accordance with the sequence of training one's mind and the varying faults of cyclic existence. And as we come to see these now ever more clearly, the determination to abandon them will grow, and we will start to develop the required antidotes. And through this, the attainment of liberation comes ever nearer. And accompanying this, we'll also be looking at the faults of grasping at oneself as dear and cultivating the other cherishing mind. So here we see, by coming to recognize where we are, coming to see what our mind stream has come to, we will, as the text says, then engage in this two-track process of eliminating faults and attaining excellent qualities. And we see the word there, engage. So we'll be engaging in the Dharma, entering into the Dharma, which is the process of eliminating faults and attaining excellent qualities. And now with this deep resolve, we will train precisely in accordance with the teachings we are receiving, because we're receiving them as direct personal instructions. So therefore we will train in accordance with the Dharma, in that correct sequence of trainings.
Kissing the Shake, the Dushe, all Druk Timpitone, Tangan to Chin, Benjamin Chedan Son, that the Shevanashi, Rala never debut to share Lavendu, Sosolia, Yomo, to some Gue, Yobata, Sosolia, Anjigi, Kuche, Nena Dunga, Anjigi, Dunga Rashimba, how where some died, never debut to she says some data redua. That and the Chetumbo body, that the Nigi say, Tablam di, Dunkendi, Sanji, Dunkri, Sambi, Easy, Dumba, the member that would she said, the Radangas never the nay, because maybe jiggy, some Diroa, the Diroa. And the Sanji soon bigi, Tablam di, that men naturally, Dinyam Solembaina, Sosugula, and the Nigi Yamsulim bigi, Pabi Govan Topna, Korea Dunga. The Tarbas don't talk with Dungal Jugri, some died, Dirwa. She then did some dana, did then the mule of the Jamro some dana get it. Jivar check the Jamro, like some sort, then put just Joala, Mazuki, Dumadi, some Dumadi, that Dumadi, the Tagudu, some big, some that Dele Jubi, Nuba Suliores, Gonjosum the Yore, say Ichiada. Sanji Dumba Sanji would you are a consumer yours. That Sanji Dumbi soon she be a tablet than Yamson by then, Nazugila, Gokenda, Lambin, Gula Kevana, and the Korea Dungalea, Tartugri, says Tagura said. Dusin is Jadi, Jamdra some data, Dinu and the Jiba Chagdua, and the Jibaro Chagdua. And then I say, Sanji Jumendigi, Yuluvaranas, Lama, Dinshi Chor, Sunadu, Dunga Shabacha, and Kunju Bawacha. Gobongunduja, Lam Gasora, Jubacha was saying, Chesam, Dunga Sheba Jasidu, Dambo, Susuga, Ganga, Korea, Dunga, the Hawores, Chesam Dunga, the Hawa, Chesam Dunga Hawad, Sosu Dunga, Dinish Dua, some died, then the Dunga, the Tarduga, some like Gigri, Chesam Dunga, Gudigas, Kunju Resha, Nyomo Baresha, the Nyomo Badi Bangwood, Tele Targudu, they got Bangbe, Bamba Togu to Sembe, Tarbe Gobato, Toad. Editorial Lamrim Neche said, Jesu, don't I give a child, this was the Ringi, Dushe, Druk Timpitone, Chen Yanage, some data, that answer Jamro, JB, Jamro, some data, then she chose Mason, then she chose Lobsang Dorje, Yamne, some data, don't I give a child, what is Chasa, some data, the
So in this way, tonight and last time, we've covered these 6 perceptions. So it should be clear then how that you can utilize these in your own practice. The first, as the text explicitly mentioned, is crucial, that one needs to perceive oneself as a patient. One needs to recognize that there's something wrong on a deep fundamental level, that our own mind is afflicted. This is crucial to the extent that that first perception is attained, the others will come about well. Recognizing that our mind is afflicted, we will then turn to the one doctor, the one skilled medical practitioner who can help, Buddha Shakyamuni, and turn towards his prescription, that of the teachings of the Buddha Dharma, knowing that that and that alone can eliminate all our suffering, and that this prescription needs to be followed as it is given to us, not reinterpreted, reimagined, but applied in the way that the skilled practitioner is instructing us. And this means applying it with vigor, repeatedly over a sustained period. So that's the 4th perception. And just to then, without going through all of them, what we see with these 4 perceptions is that this is a teaching on refuge. Because when one trains in refuge, one does so with the initial understanding that one is afflicted, one's mind is afflicted. Therefore, one turns for protection, or this word refuge is also the same word for protection. One turns to the Buddha for protection, recognizing that the Buddha is the faultless being who can guide one to be protected or attain protection from suffering. And how to do so? The Dharma jewel. In other words, cultivating in our own continuum true paths and true cessations. So here we see the teaching on refuge. And how is it that one cultivates true paths and cessations? Well, the Buddha taught this in his very first teaching, Varanasi. He taught that suffering must be known, the first noble truth. The origins of suffering are to be abandoned, the second noble truth. The cessation needs to be attained, the third noble truth. And that true paths or paths need to be cultivated, the fourth noble truth. And that fits entirely with the presentation we've heard tonight. The need to hold up the mirror of the Dharma to our own mind and recognize that the reason that we have not yet attained liberation and enlightenment is because we still are drawn to the so-called pleasures of this life, and that dominates our mind. And when being drawn to the pleasures of this life is not dominating our mind, largely is dominated by trying to repel the little problems and difficulties of this life. In this way, our time and energy is lost and consumed. So rather what we need to do, as the fulfillment of the teachings on refuge, or the application of these 6 perceptions, is to take the teachings that you have received, are receiving, and apply them like a mirror to your own mind, coming to recognize the faults that currently abide there, and striving to apply the antidotes, knowing that freedom is attainable for all of us.
코와레 마타와디 코와레 니미 마통하지 아니 니미 임바 뜻이 하고 가나요 니미 임바 직다위 공바 삼로데 공바 숙치버 메비 긴기 안 타바도니기 삼로데 리기 두고 말에 예마도데 코와레 탈도게 삼바기 두고 말 예마도데 타바도니 삼바기 두고 말 디엔상 아니 냠는 이름바디 레 두고 말에 안디나 신아 저기 전주sem바 차마도와데 전주sem 게마도 가서네 신 랑지진의 삼로들이야 년보 잠니지 균통고 균통도고 말에 균통도고 말에 가브릴레 균레서 베드스 용거디네 균인바도 공부 숙침부 말이 인바데 삼로도 공부 숙침부 말에 반사 잠니지고 두고 말에 잠니지고 뭐도 바네 잠 자주심께요 말되네 산여고바 도투에 메로와 세상 균조의 안줄레 가르스는 코위기 균 코알레 균인바 하고는 균인바데 빠치 균인바 바 삼로 야네야도 곰바지는 곰네 빼 삼로디 바 숙침보를 요구해서라다 진짜 디네 자디 니게노 차도르다 donnazo dangazo chue nyamlen je majasa chue nala kare ngodre chigorsin ngazugi dunga dige ya kanga dige ngodre che kanga yoye yudi pa ngodre che da yudi pa meba soyege tablam de dire lam nyamle tablam de di sungorda da do chue di dire da chue nyamle je di ma do ma da ka chue kare nyamle china doigo nyamle je ba inara sanga jigo nyamle je ba inara 주기 괜디 코위기 깨게 코위 괜디 뭐셔바체 디고 괜디 하고네 대려 타도게 삼바시 깨제 디 디메바 소야레 냠보티야게 람냠네 제 림바디레 디림바제 제투바이나 다 타바다 탐제 김베고바 톱투야레 디마제마도 나저게 타바다 탐제 김베고바 톱투야레 갈래 가바치도 그러바다 지고르바 코비기 균 기두마레 랑제진 삼로 랑제진 삼로라 균 야고 통두고 균 가브릴레 균을 통해내 될레 냐바 때부 휴지 안데 지 균 통두고 말아와
So what I encourage everyone to do is to hold this mirror of the Dharma up to your mind, recognize with sincerity where you are. It was expressed in this expression. That is what my mind stream has come to. Hold the mirror of the Dharma up to your mind. Come to see it clearly. And utilize then your knowledge of the Dharma to apply that to where you actually are. So this is essential for all of us to do. And what we'll see, what we'll recognize when we hold the mirror of the Dharma up to our mind, is that we have not really thought enough about the faults of samsara. We still perceive samsara as being filled with delights. Hence, we have our yearnings for samsaric pleasures, and we have a distaste only for the trivial problems of this life, not for the sufferings of samsara in their entirety. And because we have not thought well about the faults of samsara, we have not yet given rise to definite emergence. We have not given rise to a determination to emerge from the suffering realms of samsara. And this is why we find ourselves still dominated by the thoughts associated with this life's meaningless concerns. Going along with this, we have reflected a bit on the fault of grasping at oneself as dear, the self-cherishing attitude, but not to the extent that we've given rise to the determination to no longer be deceived by this self-centered attitude. And this is why we have not been able to train successfully in the cultivation of love and compassion. Therefore, the attainment of bodhicitta is still so distant. So this is something that for me, I say, the texts say this too, but it is for all of us, it's for all of us to look at our own mind and recognize that we need to reflect much more on the faults of samsara. This needs to be our focus, because by applying our efforts to where we are right now, we will develop the indispensable foundation for our spiritual development. To the extent that we develop a recognition that this life's affairs are meaningless, we'll have the breadth of mind to think beyond this life and recognize that samsara itself is only pervaded by misfortune, and samsara in its entirety needs to be abandoned. Only then have we got the mental strength and breadth and far-sighted outlook to sincerely strive for liberation and enlightenment. But to do so, we all can do. It's within everyone's capacity, but it does take a focused attention on where we are right now. So then, thank you very much. Then we'll conclude here for this evening, and we'll continue tomorrow. Thank you.